Simon's alongside me. We saw Everton for the first time, Simon, last night since the second points deduction. We've seen the first time. For those who don't know, Everton were hit with a 10-point deduction that was reduced to 6 last week. It was another 2, so that takes it up to 8. What did we see last night from Everton on the field of play, Simon? Did we see a reflection of that second punishment, do you think? When heads were down right from the start, and you think it's as many as Chelsea want to score on the night?
Well, if we did, then they should be bloody well ashamed of themselves, because they have a responsibility to do what they can do. They can only control the controllables. It should not be allowed to be an excuse for them. Because if they want to have some pain, then they can all land in the Championship and get Championship wages. Right? And they'll soon liven themselves up when that realisation lands upon them. It was a bad performance. It was a bad performance that's been coming for a period of time because Everton are out of sorts. They were poor against Burnley last week, and Burnley committed their usual act of self-harm to give the team an opposition a chance, which is how they won that game with a Calvert-Lewin goal when the goalkeeper kicks it straight against Calvert-Lewin. So they were poor in that game. They've not won many games over the last 11, 12 games. They've been in a poor run of form, and it's culminated in this outcome. Like Liverpool have been in a poor run of form recently. They've gone off the boil. They were lucky to beat Sheffield United. They struggled at times against Man United. They've got smashed by Atalanta, and it culminated in getting beat at home by Crystal Palace. All of the recent experiences that Everton have had, and none of that is, if they want to use it, Jim, then they can use it. They've got a built-in, priced-in, baked-in excuse. But they don't, because the footballers live in their own little world. As long as their paycheck is coming in at the end of every single month, if they want to choose to listen to the fact that points have been taken away, they're not in a relegation zone. They're not in the bottom 3. You know, they could be 6 points higher up the league.
I hear you, but Sean Dyche just said it will have a psychological effect.
He would do, because he's a football manager. But his job is to turn around, and if he allows it to
one win in 15 league games.
But that's fine. That's down to Sean Dyche and the players. That's not down to points being taken away. That's down to the choices that they're making on a football field and their performances on it. And if they want to use it, they are human beings. They're not impermeable. It will reach their psyche. Yeah. But it's about how you choose. You can control your own mind. It's about how you choose to let things affect you. And nobody makes Jordan Pickford decide to pass the ball straight to a Chelsea player. Nobody makes Everton turn up and be lackadaisical, because ultimately their responsibility and you'll see a reaction from them. They've got games coming up, and you look at their games and you say, okay, they've gotten spanked by Chelsea. Once upon a time, Southampton got beat 9 by Leicester at home. And they went and played Leicester later on in the season, and they beat them. Right? There's nothing more demoralising and debilitating and humiliating getting beat 9 by somebody at your home ground, I think it was. Yeah. Now, they've got 3 games that they're going to focus on. They've got Forest, Luton and Sheffield United. These are the games that are... This is the business for Everton. They've got to beat Luton. They've got to get results at Forest, and they've got to beat Sheffield United, and jobs are good, and they're done.
You being you knew a bit about this last week, when the US investment firm 777 was seeking an extension to a deadline over the money owed to MSP Capital plus businessmen Andy Bell and George Downing. And
George is my friend,
You spoke about that with me, Simon, to a degree. And I know you can't go into much detail about it. Mashiri was there last night, incidentally, at Stamford Bridge, watching events on the field unfold. They've now been given more time to try and repay the majority of that £158 million loan and proceed with their takeover. Now, Mashiri negotiated the extension with MSP Sports Capital on behalf of 777 before a deadline of last night. In the meantime, Simon, 777 will continue to fund the day-to-day running of the club, having already loaned Everton about 180 million quid. Now, it's suggested that
it's all secured money. It's all secured against assets.
Well, it is. And loans against 51% of Mashiri's stake in the club, right?
And also against...
But if that collapses, Mashiri loses control of the club.
Well, that is what it is.
And does that equal administration?
No, I don't think so. I mean, the threat of administration has been mooted, and it was predominantly mooted around the MSP loan, wasn't it? But I think, given the intellectual capital behind those loans and the will behind them, certainly from George, and I'm not going to speak about George's business too much because he's quite a private individual, but his interests are with Everton Football Club, and he wants the best outcomes for Everton Football Club, and the investment or the loan that he put in place was to help Everton Football Club, so he'll do nothing to hinder Everton Football Club.
Sure.
So the threat of that loan being immediately called in and the immediacy of it probably weren't real. There are more creation of people's perception of it.
Right, obviously, it would never get that grave. Right.
Well, I don't think so, but ultimately it depends how things play out. The intention is for Everton to come out of this situation. I personally think that they're jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. because I think that when someone's buying a football club that doesn't have a positive cash flow and is loading it with debt, I'm not entirely sure how they think that's going to run well and play well. But that's the 7-7-7 model. Moshiri is out and doesn't want to be there, and for whatever reason that is, because either he's wasted too much money, of his or other people's money, or he realises that this isn't for him anymore and he can't do this job.
But that's crucially important, because if the takeover then collapses, 777 are saying they'll continue to fund the day-to-day running of the club. But that might change.
There'll be a buyer for Everton. The only person that will really suffer in the longevity of a deal is Moshiri, because if he has to cut his cloth accordingly and the valuation of Everton has to come down to meet what people are prepared to pay, then that person that will suffer from that will be Moshiri, because he can't get what he wants from it. There's a price for Everton. That price is being determined by Moshiri and the indebtedness, right?
Right.
So if Moshiri has to take a haircut because all of a sudden 777 aren't in the mix and someone else comes along, Everton Football Club will be bought. And I'd be gobsmacked, and I've said things before that have come back and haunted me, if Everton find themselves in the way of an administration, because there's too much money. There's too much money around. There's too many people that have secured that money in certain ways, and I expect Everton to come out of this with the football club intact, whether it's with the right set of owners. Look, again, I make the point without boring the pants of everybody. If you are not putting money into a football club and you're relying on a football club's cash flow to service the debt that you're loading it with, there's only a few places in the world that can work. Manchester United is one of them, and look at the vilification the Glazers have got from that. This football club, and Man United, has a huge positive cash flow. So does Tottenham Hotspur on the whole. But Everton doesn't. And so if you're going to load it with more debt, how is your business model going to work? I don't know how that's going to work, quite frankly.
This A word, administration, is that ultimately unrealistic?
Well, nothing is beyond the realms of possibility, but I would be very, very surprised if it ends up in that position. I'd be very surprised. And I'd also be surprised, irrespective of a 6-0 hammering, if Everton get relegated.
I remember they said that when Craig White was at Rangers. Unlikely. Unrealistic.
Oh, that was a completely different set of affairs. That was about a whole raft of other challenges and a whole raft of breaches and complications and illegality that came into play.
Sure. Anyway, the upshot was that it was a disaster on the field last night for Everton. A 6-0 defeat. I mean, I often say it, Newcastle fans, Everton fans, to me, some of the best in the business. But Everton right now, 1 win in 15 league games for Everton. Those fans deserve better. It's 10:30.